And so all of a sudden, the way I thought about things wasn't so much about what can I do, but it was how can I help people do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So Andy, thank you so much for joining us this morning. In a couple short words, what all do you do at TriStar? I mean, I know you're on the philanthropic solution side. I know you're also out in the business pretty heavily as well. And so chop it up.
I think a lot of people are wondering, what do I do? My role is a bit of a, kind of like you said, a lot of things. One is business development, obviously introducing people in the community to TriStar, and that runs the full spectrum of philanthropic solution clients, as well as individual wealth management clients that are either institutional or individuals. Our financial planning services, a new kind of initiative for us to really focus on. So working on that. So just a lot of things. It's really reaching out to people and finding out where they are and where we can be helpful.
Sure.
So, making contact and checking in with a lot of friends and business acquaintances, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in a very similar role, not similar as in wealth management, but similar within foundations and endowments at SVSU in a prior role, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, it was a public-facing role, and part of my job was to connect the university with the community, and I think that's the same role I have with TriStar is to connect TriStar with the community. And so there's, I think baked into all of our roles is public relations. And so being able to, be part of the face of TriStar is important.
Yeah.
So there's just it's a lot of things. I think that whenever you're, trying to do well at something, you try to take ownership of it. And I think that's what we all do at TriStar is we kind of have our own ownership of the business, so that we're out there trying to put our best foot forward and trying to make TriStar look as good as we can, so that we're attractive and kind of living out our mission.
Yeah. So philanthropy has been a big part of your career. Is that where you started, and what drew you to philanthropy?
Yeah, I know that's a great question, but I think philanthropy has been like a gift to me. I know it sounds kind of funny, but I grew up. I worked in the golf business my whole life, and that's what I did. I was a golfer. I was a PGA pro, and I had developed the sawmill in Saginaw. And in my mid-30s, I started to realize that this is probably not what I want to do the rest of my life. And I talked to Eric Gilbertson at SVSU. I was the golf coach there, and I said, I really think it's time for a career change, but I have no idea what my skill set is. And he said, I think we can find something here for you. And he put me in the foundation at SVSU, and I kind of worked my way up and ended up being the foundation director there. And the reason why I say it was a gift to me is that my whole life, up to that point, was really thinking about what I wanted and what I wanted to do, and how I could make things better for myself. And when you get into philanthropy, you find out you work with a lot of people who are trying to make life better for others.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, the way I thought about things wasn't so much about what can I do, but it was how can I help people do what they want to do.
Yeah. That's terrific. Yeah. So that gets back, like the book that you just wrote.
Yeah.
It talks, obviously it's about relationship first, right? Philanthropy. So you talked a lot about relationships there. So what inspired the idea for the book?
Yeah. I think the book, it didn't start out as a book. I think that's probably the best part. I think that I would never in a million years thought I could write a book. And I think if you think about sitting down to write a book, I don't know, it seems like such a vast ocean that you're going to be swimming in. How do you do it? But what I was doing is I was just compiling ideas that I had learned because I was completely new to this, and no knowledge at all. And I had an opportunity to interact with some big companies that were consultants to SVSU, go through workshops and things like that. And through my work, as I learned things, I'd write them down. And pretty soon I had a list of 10, then I had a list of 20. Then I turned it into an outline. And I showed Diane Boehm at SVSU. I showed her, she was the director of the Writing Center. I showed her what I was working on. And she goes, "You really need to keep working on this. This could be a book."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Geez, I didn't think about a book." And then when I'd kept working on it, and this is over, probably a 15-year period.
Right.
This is kind of a collective of things I've, kind of gathered over time. And when I started working at TriStar, after about a year, I showed Jack what I was working on. I said, "I don't know if this goes to the dumpster or where it goes, but I've been working on this for a while. I want you to take a look at it." And he came back after a weekend of reading it, and he said, "I think you got something here." And he gave me some great advice, how to build it out, how to strengthen it. And we kind of went back and forth. And Jack deserves a lot of credit for this for the book coming to life.
I love the way you put it together. It's very simple to read. I like bullet points. Okay. So I like, hey, here's the topic and here are some important things to consider. It's very easy to read. It's very easy to understand, very easy to identify with. So what, had you read another book that was similar in that outline or?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I did a workshop yesterday and we talked about this a little bit. I think that sometimes some of the books I've read that are this type of book, they just go into so much detail you get lost.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's some key points to make in the book. And so what I was trying to stay away from is getting too involved and repetitive and, just get to the point.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that, what's the main point here? And what's the takeaway? And then move on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see in the book, it's puzzle pieces. And so hopefully each page puts a piece of the puzzle together for with the next page.
Yeah, and the illustrations are fantastic.
Yeah.
So if you do get a chance, please get a chance to pick up a copy of the book. You can get in touch with Will or I, or you can find it on Amazon.
Amazon, yeah.
Reach out to any of us, to Andy here. But it's a terrific book, and the illustrations are great too.
So without revealing too much, let's go break down some of those core principles. And so when you talk about strategy, how do you envision that?
Yeah, I think the strategy is how you develop partnerships with your donors.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the people who are really afraid of fundraising, I kind of look at it as you're trying to get something from somebody, and it becomes kind of a cat and mouse game, and that's not what fundraising is. Not at a high level. What it really is more development. And the strategy is, how do you bring an idea to a donor or a group of donors and collaborate with them in a meaningful way where they feel like your idea aligns with the things that are important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Give them a chance to give you some input, and then fund it. So I really think the strategy piece is all about relationship building and building partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
So not necessarily a quick sale, but more of a fostering of a relationship or anything else.
Yeah, good point, Will, because I think what happens is, there's certain fundraising out there that's transactional. You get a phone call from a robocaller, and there's some emergency, and it pulls on your heartstrings, and you give $10 or $20. I think the kind of the philanthropy and fundraising that I'm talking about is really the transformational kind of stuff. How to build a business school at a university, like what I worked on at SVSU with the Carmona College. How to develop programs that are long lasting, endowed programs where the money's there for a couple hundred years, not for a couple hundred days.
Mm-hmm. So how does that even begin with Carmona and the school? Or where did that conversation start? How long was the relationship being built before something like that comes to fruition?
Yeah, that's where, in your role as a development professional, that's where you have to really know the big strategy of your organization. And I knew that the university had a expansion of the business school on the drawing board.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job as an executive at the institution, to know what the heck's going on, big picture, because I'm in the alignment business. When someone shows an interest in something that we have that's either current or coming along, to try to make the connections really important. So we had this plan, and actually Scott Carmona said to me one day, what's next for Nancy and I?
Yeah.
That really shows the relationship. I mean, that we had this, really open and honest relationship as the fundraiser and the donor. And I said, well, I said the next big thing that we're going to be working on is this business school.
Yeah.
And I actually planted the seed right at that time. I said, we'd love to put your name on it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And that took, probably took about 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah. That's neat.
And so when you're actively thinking about this, it's one thing to go say, let's go open a new business school. And then as you're trying to attract more fundraising, more donors, so on and so forth, how important is it as you think about the story selling aspect of it? And selling might not be the right word, but trying to envision the story that you really want to go portray, because I can imagine it goes a lot deeper than let's go open a new business school per se.
Yeah. I had a mentor, his name's Bill Carlton. He's still around. He's down in Sarasota, and he's one of the kind of the icons in philanthropy and especially philanthropic consulting. And there's some why questions that you ask, okay? And this is when you're thinking of an idea and you're trying and you're going to need support for it. You have to ask these questions that are going to be answered in the mind of the donor. Why? Okay? Why now? Why me? What's it going to look like when it's done? I have to answer those questions for that donor so I can paint the picture for them.
Right.
And that's what storytelling does. Okay. You can put a lot of words together. Okay. And, and people are really, really good at it. The words aren't meant for a quick sale. The words are meant to paint a picture that becomes kind of what your vision is, what your promise is, and that grand vision of what it's going to look like when it's done. Now, at SVSU, our grand vision was to grow the business school so that we could provide more talent for the business community in the region. Makes a lot of sense. Now, the good news is last year they were up 10% in enrollment in their business school.
Yeah.
So I talked to Jay Odie, the dean, and I said, could you write a letter to all the donors and let them know that?
Yeah, right.
Because that's why they signed on. That's what they want. And that's the cool thing about philanthropy is you're dealing with people who want to help. It's either create an opportunity or solve a problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've got these people that are incredibly well-meaning. It always kind of blows me away to think about people who are incredibly wealthy. And they give their money away. I mean, This is really what they do. This is hard-earned dollars that people give away, and it's really, it's just remarkable.
Yeah.
So they're not selfish.
Yeah. Well, they've done a great job with the business school. I mean, how many people have we recently hired from the Carmona School of Business? There's quite a few. I know we have
quite a few. And I think too, when you go look at the most common place where people went to college at TriStar, SVSU is probably number one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was an objective. And, we could probably have a full, podcast on SVSU and that whole process. And they do incredible work, I mean, everything. I mean, if I started mentioning the great work they do, I'd leave out too many things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just within our own investment team, one of the things that we really liked, and when we were finding out all the things that they were going to go do, specifically was the Bloomberg Financial Lab that is at SVSU, because not only to go construct something independent for investing is obviously important and akin to the mission, but then the amount of money and resources just to go in, because one of those terminal licenses is close to $30,000 just for one of them. That's
right.
I don't know the exact number, but at least 5 or 6 of them. So obviously that's a variable cost that's going to go up. And so the donors are seeing, hey, look at this investment we can go put inside the students. Let's try and go see where the ROI could potentially be.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. One of the things you talk about, another one of the core principles is stewardship. Yeah. And one of the things I took away that you talked about on a number of different places was like soft skills, right? Recognizing important events and things like that. So tell us about the importance of that and sort of when you recognize some of those things.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I recognize is that you're working so hard to attract donors that you attract new donors at the peril of your core donors. And you have to be careful of that because, having long-term donors is the secret sauce to major and planned gifts.
Right.
And these are people who are going to be committed to your organization for a very long time. So if you're not continually stewarding these donors, and it's not like you have to, knock on their door every day, but it's things that you have to do to make sure that they know that you're paying attention.
Right.
And it's little things, the things that they're interested in, some of their preferences where, maybe someone is, has made a gift in a particular time of the year and they've asked that you send a solicitation at that time. You do have to customize for your donors.
Right.
And, you can't treat them all the same. And if the only thing you're doing is asking them every time you connect with them, then that's not a really good relationship.
Right.
You have to be able to show them some of the, share the success stories with them because that's what they're giving for is to help you be successful. So if you can make sure that that there's a balance of storytelling and kind of reporting back and those annual asks in invitations to give recognition. We talked about this yesterday in a workshop. Nominate your donors for awards.
Right.
AFP has awards. We used to do that with our SVSU donors. All the communities have different awards through the chambers and different things. So try to lift them up because if all you're trying to do is take,
right,
that's just a one-way street, and it doesn't last long.
And it's not genuine.
No.
Right?
No,
I mean,
not at all.
like a handwritten note, for
Right.
instance, is one of the things you talk about. And there's so much authenticity in a handwritten note, right? It's not just some document that you wrote up and just changed the names on it, 100 different times or whatnot, but really showing that personal care. And it's got to be genuine. It has to be authentic.
Right.
You really do have to care. You can't just pretend.
Yeah,
Right.
think about where, let's say you've given to an organization for 10 years, and it seems really routine that you make a gift and you get a receipt back, and you make a gift and you get a receipt back, or maybe you make 5 gifts in a year and you get a receipt back. But if you get a note from the director or somebody, what it says is, hey, we're acknowledging you. We're paying attention. We know you made the gift, especially the director or the president,
Right.
because it's important that the people at the top know the people who are supporting the organization. And when you get a personal note, it really affirms that they know that you've made a gift, and they've acknowledged it in a way where it's kind of like, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's genuine.
Yeah, I can say as a giving organization, TriStar, we support a lot of different philanthropic efforts in the communities that we serve. And sometimes we don't get any and I don't need, you don't necessarily need public recognition for when you give, right? But just getting a note of thanking you and recognizing you means a lot.
Yeah. And it's like, and the other thing is making sure that some of the details are right.
Right.
You're like, dear, dear Kent. Well, no, my name's Kevin. They don't even know who I am. I've been giving to this organization for 15 years, and they don't even know my first name.
Yeah, that's almost like a deal breaker.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
yeah, it's almost a great way to break up.
Exactly. Yeah. If you really want to break up with a donor, which probably isn't advised.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, you just it's so acknowledging and affirming is really important. But what you're trying to do, at SVSU we had 3,500 donors, and so what you're trying to do is develop a personal relationship with 3,500 people. You can't do that, but what you can do is in your communication make it personal,
Right.
and make it look personal. And so if they've the donors will tell you how they want to be addressed. Address me as Bill, not William. Send something to me. I'm the person that has the relationship. Because we were an academic institution, maybe the spouse was a graduate of a different school.
Sure.
So and that spouse wasn't really interested in supporting what this one was. So send it directly to me, or There's all kinds of their salutations. And
Those can be important too.
Yeah, we might have had 10 different ways a salutation would go to a donor.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
And so putting all these puzzle pieces together, how important is it to have a good board? And can you give some examples if a board was good versus bad and how that might impact things?
It's a good question because I think it's a partnership, and each has a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The director and the institution has a responsibility to program the board in a way. Number one, what are we trying to do? How can they help?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't know that, that's a big problem. And you think about the boards that you've served on,
Mm-hmm.
and I've talked about this a lot. You get done with a board meeting, you've got your binder, you close your binder, you go and you throw it in your trunk, and you bring it back to the office, and you put it on a bookshelf. If the next time you open that binder is to take it to the next board meeting,
Right.
that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I recommend to our clients and to anybody who's in a director's position is, number one, you have to make sure that your board knows what it is that you want them to do.
Sure.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what you're trying to do and how they can help. Okay,
Yeah.
and those are two simple things. But you can get lost because there's so much that you have to do, right? You have to recruit board members. You have to create, have the board meetings. You have all this reporting that goes on at board meetings. You've got all of the details. But when it comes down to it, what are you trying to do? How can they help? And so I think that when you have a board, you obviously have to get people who want to work,
Right.
that want to help out. Okay. But it's just as important to tell them what it is that you want them to do.
Yeah.
And what you can't do is you can't bring a board member, sit down and say, I'd really like you to join my board, but you don't have to do much.
Right. Right.
Because a lot of times that's the selling point, because
Sure.
you don't want them to say no.
Right.
But you know what? The really, really enlightened board member is going to walk away from that. They're going to say, no way. If I'm going to be on your board, I know I'm going to have to work.
Mm-hmm.
Let me know what you need me to do. Why do you want me on this board? What skill set do I have that connects best, where I can be helpful?
Yeah.
Sure.
What about giving from board members? Is it required? Is it? I get this question. I hear this quite often. Like, should a board member be expected to give? Required?
Yeah. So we talk about time, talent, and treasure.
Yeah.
Right. And giving time, talent, and treasure. But if you have an initiative where you're raising money and you send a board member out to ask for money and they haven't given, that's not a good signal.
Right.
So I think that board members do have to give, but they have. It's kind of a wrong way of putting it. They should want to. Right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
That's an invitation. So we want you involved, and giving is kind of setting an example to the community that it's important to you. This organization is important, so important that I got involved, and I'm giving my own resources to it because I think it's important.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more. And so I can imagine along the way, obviously you've had some success in relation to trying to go build some projects up or some different donor relations. But what would happen in the case if you were to go face not rejection, but maybe some objection from some donors? So let's just go, so you're trying to go raise project A, B, and C, and maybe some donors are apprehensive about that at that time.
Yeah. So there's the alignment piece is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you go to a donor and you make an ask and they say no, I have to wonder, how much time did you spend with them, getting to know them before you made the ask?
Sure.
Because the project that you're working on, it may not have any alignment with them at all, and what their giving priorities are.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to know that. A lot of times in our communities, we identify donors because they have wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And we could all name off the top 5 names, right?
Right.
And say, well, go see this person or go see that foundation. Okay, that's great because they do have resources, and we all know that. Now the question is, do they have an interest in what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they have the ability. Are they linked? Are they interested? And if they're not linked and not interested, now that's not to say that you can't engage them and tell them, have an opportunity to talk with them what you're doing and why it's important and create some interest there. That takes time.
Sure.
You can't just walk in the door asking for money. You have to listen more, talk less, and like you've told, like the book, build the relationship. Right?
Yeah, it's the best opportunity for the lowest amount possible.
Right.
Is to go in cold,
right,
and make an ask. Now, a lot of the charitable foundations in our communities, their purpose is to give, right? So so the very first point is, that their reason for being is to make charitable contributions into the community. Now what you have to do is you have to figure out, all right, what level do we rise to with this organization? Do we align with their giving priorities? And knowing how much these organizations, what their major gift capacity is, in that information is public information. You can find that. That going in. So pretty much the game is pretty well understood by everybody that's in it.
Yeah.
But if you can't make a real strong case for it, is what it is you're trying to do and why it's important and why it connects with this organization or this donor, you might be fortunate enough to get a gift.
Yeah.
But to optimize it, you really have to have the alignment.
Yeah. Right.
And then going from there as well, Andy, how do you go measure success as you're thinking about fundraising as well? Because I can imagine you probably won't have 100% close rate. That'd be great if you did, but possibly not. Of course, you're doing homework, as what you're just mentioning, trying to go in there with a better assertion of can it go positive, can it go negatively? And so what's like a good common method that you've seen that people can, or nonprofits can go measure how successful they might be doing?
Yeah, I would say that consecutive years giving by donors would be something that you'd really want to pay attention to. Because if donors are, giving, year over year for, 10, 15, 20 years, that and really you need to be talking with them to understand why.
Sure.
Because that's the secret sauce to get others to do it. If you have a lot of, if your retention rate is really low after 1 or 2 years, we always measure it on 3 years in a row. So 3 years is a magic point, I think.
Okay.
And so I think that really looking at that retention is an indicator. I say in the book, if you're working for an organization that puts money ahead of relationships, you're in the wrong place. And so, of course, you have to raise money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your job as a fundraiser. But the relationships come ahead of the fundraising. So if if your job, if you can do a lot of damage fundraising. People don't understand that. You can do a ton of damage because what you do is you pin people in, you back them in a corner, and it's like, okay, they pacify you with a gift, and now all of a sudden they won't take your call the next time. Why is that? Well, because they feel like that the interaction with you was so one-sided that it wasn't about them, it was about you, and they don't want to be in relationships like that.
Right. Yeah. Andy, I think you have a copy of the book next to you. You mind if I
do.
Yeah. Let's show everybody. So here we have it, Relationship First Fundraising, by our guest here, Andy Bethune. Fantastic book, Mastering Fundraising Through Relationships and Trust. So make sure to pick up a copy, get in touch with one of us, or go onto Amazon. And then in closing, Andy, you've talked about your background with regards to golf.
Yep.
Okay. So you have an opportunity to play golf in a foursome with 3 people, living or past. Who would those 3 people be, and why?
Okay, so I'll get past the easy one first because I love my dad so much, and I'd always put my dad in the foursome, but I'm not going to put my dad in the foursome because he's the automatic, and so let's talk about people I don't know or who I'd like to. I think Bobby Jones would be would be 1. I think Nicholas would be 2, and then I think that it would be there'd be a cross between because I'm a hockey fan as well. So
Okay.
it'd be either Tiger Woods or Wayne Gretzky.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I think that the history of the game with Bobby Jones and creating Augusta National and the Masters, and being the greatest amateur of all time, I think would be interesting. Nicholas, he influenced me as a kid.
Yeah.
And then Tiger, Tiger and Gretzky, because they're really the greatest of their eras,
Right.
and just to kind of be around that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Cool.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being able to come on, share a little more about your book, background, golf. Golf's always fun to go chat about as well. And thank everyone for listening or watching to another great episode of Mitten Money. Until next time.